Hello game makers, this is GameMaker Rob, and in this episode we'll be covering innkeepers, where we can talk to the innkeeper, automatically move to a bed, get our hit point and magic points back, and a couple of other things as well. So let's get started. Okay, so this episode is just going to be covering the innkeeper and a few other bits and bats. I did intend to cover finishing the spells, but in order to cast spells from the world map, the player's going to need another menu system for himself, and I was waiting to make sure that everything was working as well as it could be, and to try to minimize the amount of changes that we make and new variables that we're going to introduce. So I'd rather just spend more time on that first before we record it. So in order to get an innkeeper working, this guy here, this NPC is going to be my innkeeper, and I do have some variables inside the creation code. We're going to get to that in a minute. I want to explain first how my innkeeper is going to work. So every time I have an NPC that is a shopkeeper or an innkeeper, I want their actual sprite to be a shop counter, like this. So this sprite is going to get drawn where the NPC is, and inside the NPC in the creation code, he's going to have a variable called facing. So don't copy this right now, I'm going to come back to this, but the facing for this shopkeeper is going to be south, and I'm going to draw it above the shop counter. So to explain all that in better detail, if we go into the NPC object and make a draw event, and this code you need to copy down. So first of all, we need to check whether the NPC is an innkeeper or a shopkeeper. If it is, then all of this code is relevant to him. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to replace the NPC sprite with the shop counter, and then draw himself. And then in the creation code, we are going to check what facing is. So for this particular one, the facing, I have set him to south because I want the actual pretend image of the innkeeper to look down, and I want him to be drawn above the shop counter. So draw y equals y minus grid size, that will draw it above the shop counter. And the reason that we need facing at all, apart from that, is because we're then going to draw the sprite of the innkeeper, but the actual image of the innkeeper has the facings like this. So facing north is 0, east is 1, south is 2, west is 3. I think I went over this in the last episode. I went over facing let's go back into the inner object direction. So the order of these, north, east, south, west, has to match the image order for this, north, east, south, west. And so when we actually go into the game, there's going to be an image of the innkeeper drawn there, and his facing is going to be determined by what we set inside the shopkeeper, inside the NPC here. So let me just go back to the draw event. So that's what this line does. Otherwise, if the NPC type is not an innkeeper or shopkeeper, it's just going to draw its normal image like that. So once you've got that down, we're going to go into the village and the creation code, and we're going to set the NPC type as the innkeeper. That's just for drawing purposes. And NPC ID, this is going to give him the innkeeper text. We need to set in cost to something because the default is 0. So we don't want the player to stay for free because we're mean. It doesn't matter if the guy's got a sword stuck in him, he still needs to pay some money. I've gone over facing and sleep X and sleep Y. Let me just explain to you how the innkeeper script is going to work. So the player's going to come over to the innkeeper, he's going to talk to him, he's going to pay some money, he's going to be disabled so he can't move anymore. The screen's going to fade to black, and the player, when it's black, is going to get warped over to the bed, and then the screen's going to fade from black to white, and then the player is going to be able to move again. And these coordinates are going to be the sleep X and sleep Y coordinates, and those are being set here. And the way to get those coordinates is you can either drag over the player or something else, double click and get the X and the Y there, and that will be the same as sleep X and sleep Y. So let's just run the game, make sure that everything's being displayed properly. So there we are. We can now actually talk to the shop counter, and he's going to have the InnKeeper text, but it's not going to work because we have the InnKeeper stuff commented out in the player step event. So we will get to that now. Okay, so if we go into the player step event, and if you recall, we want to be in the talking section, and then we want to be in the next message section, and then where we're checking for the special characters, we want the InnKeeper stuff here. Just gonna remove the comments. So when the let me just go back into the init event to show you the NPC text. So the first message is going to be take a load off, then it's going to be the @ symbol and a 0, and this is going to show the cost in gold to stay. So it will say it's going to cost 6 gold. Is that okay? At this stage, either this message or this message, the player can still cancel and move away. If you press OK on this message, then this next message is going to display, and we're going to run a new script called SCR InnKeeper. This only works if the player has enough gold, obviously. So in the step event of the player, that's what this is for. So when it's the @ symbol and 0, it's going to say this. The text is going to be replaced by this. And then when it goes to @ symbol and 1, the text is either going to be replaced by have a good night and then run the script, or get out of here, pauper, because the player's too poor to stay at the inn. So that's what this is for. This is the whole text for the InnKeeper. Once you've got that down, so the next thing we need to do is to make a script called SCR InnKeeper. So if we go into this new script that I've made, it's just quite short. So we're going to set the player to disabled. We're going to remove gold from the player's account to pay for it. We're going to have a new object called obj Goodnight. What this does here is just to make sure we don't have more than one object at a time, more than one instance of it at a time. So as long as there isn't an existing Goodnight object, we're going to make one. We're going to use the InnKeeper's sleep X and sleep Y coordinates and store them in our new sleep object. So once you've got that down, we're going to make a new object. So right click, create object, and we're going to call it obj Goodnight, like so. Let me just check the spelling. There we go. You should see the variable turn from blue to red. If you've ever typed the name of an object and it's blue, it means you've made a mistake somewhere. It means basically there's no object with that name that exists. So once you've done that, let's just drag him up there. And in the create event, we're going to put these variables. So alpha is going to control the fading in and out, and fade out, it's going to be true to start with, and then as soon as it gets to black, it's going to fade back in from black to white. That's what these are for. So now we'll create a step event, and we're going to paste this code in here. So to start with, we're going to be fading out. So if the alpha is less than 1, we're going to increase it by this amount. Otherwise, when it gets to 1, then we're going to be unblocking the tile that the NPC was currently on, because otherwise that wouldn't get done. Move the player to the sleep X and sleep Y coordinates, and we also need to reset target X and Y to the player's X and Y. This bit is important if you're using my movement code, because if you don't do this, the player is going to be moving really weirdly afterwards. So once the player's been moved, we're going to be now fading in. So if the alpha is greater than 0, reduce it by the same amount. Once it gets to 0, we're going to be doing this bit. We're going to allow the player to move. We're going to change the text the player can see to save travels. I'm also going to restore the player's hit points and mana points. We're going to do the draw event first, and then we're going to test it out to make sure it works properly. So make a draw event for the Goodnight object, and we're going to paste this code here. So draw set color to black. We're just going to, the player object already has coordinates for the camera, which is CX and CY. This is the top left and top right coordinates for the camera. So we're going to grab that as the start, as the top left of our black rectangle, and the bottom right coordinates are going to be just the width and height of the view added onto it. And then we're going to draw the rectangle like this, and draw set alpha. That's going to set the alpha for the image. So if it's less than 1, it can be transparent. If it's greater than 1, it's still going to look the same as it is as it's 1. And then we just need to make sure that we set it back to 1 as well. Otherwise, the other images that are being drawn in the game will also look transparent. So it's important to reset it like that. So once you've done this, if we run the game, you should see everything working properly. Oh, actually, you know what we should do is, let's just go into the player object, into the draw GUI, and let's display hit points, mana points, draw set color. See white. Okay, so this should display our mana and our hit points. One more thing we should do is, in player stats, we'll give him hit points of 5 and no mana. So let's run the game. So we can see he's got 5 hit points and no mana. We're going to, in 100 gold, we're going to talk to the innkeeper. Take a load off, that'll be 6G. So now we've got 94, fading out, fading back in, and we have maximum hit points and mana. Cool. One last test we should do is if we set our gold to, let's give him 11 gold. Let's do this again. So we'll stay this time. Now we've got 5 gold. We're going to rest again because we're lazy and we can't do it. Awesome. There's one more thing I want to add to our Goodnight object. I've noticed a small bug where after you wake up you can keep pressing the OK button and you'll be able to have a conversation with the innkeeper from the bed. That's not really something I want to happen. That might be something that you're happy with, but I want to change it. I think what I might do in the future is change the text system so that after we get to the last line, if we press OK again, we're just going to end the conversation. But for now, I've got a bit of a band-aid for the Goodnight object. If we go into the create event, we're going to have a new variable called hell timer, and in the step event, in our fade in region, I've changed it a bit. So we've changed obj player.disabled equals false, we moved it over to here, and we're now checking for the player to hold down a button before we delete the object and allow the player to start moving. This is so that the safe travels text will display for longer. That's all it's for. So once you've got this down, you should be able to have the same as what I'm going to show you now. Just touch the NPC. So we keep pressing the OK button, nothing's working. Move away, and there we go. Talk to the innkeeper again. Awesome. Okay, so I don't know if you guys noticed, but when we warp around, especially when we're moving from room to room, the player doesn't start with the proper facing. He always starts facing down because that's his default sprite. So we're just going to add some code, a few things, just to make sure that the player sprite is facing the same way as he entered the room. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into our world map and just get rid of the battle spawner for now, because I don't want to have to fight any battles. The issue with facing is most visible when going into the dungeon, and let's also where are we? Let's also make the INS battle layer and collisions, not collisions, I'll do, just so we can see the player better. And we're going to have a new global variable in the create event. So under warp variables, we're going to have global.playerFacing equals e_direction.south. And we're going to be changing this whenever we warp around. And so go into the player step event, and inside our warping region, if we collide with a warp object, we want to set the global facing, which is here. You don't need this. Just saving the last facing of the player into a global. That's all this is going to do. And last thing that we need to do is in the create event of the player. So these lines are new. So we want to set the facing to our global.playerFacing. It used to be this. It used to just be set to e_direction.south, but we don't need this anymore. And we also need to set the player sprite based on facing, which is what this is for. We could move all the player sprites for the stationary sprites and put it into something like this. Would be less lines of code, but I don't think it's a big issue just to have this for now, because it's not going to affect much of the rest of the game. So it doesn't really require changing everything around just to make this into one line of code. So now we've done that, if you want to run the game, we should be able to move to the tower. And we're walking up. So now when we get into the tower dungeon, we're facing up. And let me try it from a different direction. Cool. So now whenever we warp, whatever direction we were facing at the time of warping is the same direction we're going to be facing when we're leaving or entering. I just spent about the last half an hour, 45 minutes thinking that I had a new movement bug, and I completely forgot that I had hidden the battle layer. So the player was pausing and not moving, and I couldn't see a battle. I was like, oh no, there's a new bug with the movement. But actually, it was just the fact that the battle was going on and I couldn't see anything. So there's one more thing that I wanted to do today. We're going to make the monster shake whenever they get hit. The only thing we need to change is inside OBJ monster. So if you go into the create event, we're going to add this stuff. It's basically the same shake variables we have in the battle object, but this time we're going to have it for the monster. And actually, we don't need this one. We can take this out. So you need this in the create event, and then in the step event. So as soon as the player's hit, we want to set shake to true. So this line of code will make sure that we only set do shake to true one time. That's all you need in this region. And in this region, this is going to do the shake animation. So if we're shaking, then just run the shake timer. We don't need that actually either. We don't need that. So if we're shaking, then we're going to change shake X and shake Y to random coordinate. And as soon as we stop getting hit, we're going to stop shaking and reset the shake X and Y, because we want to make sure the monster ends up in the same place as they started. And in the draw GUI, we just want to add shake X and shake Y to the XX and YY. And that should allow us to have a bit more interesting effect when we hit the monsters. So if we run the game, press attack, they now shake. There we go. Awesome. So I will catch you next time, guys. Bye for now.